So this is a quick video on how your students can utilize the Bluebook SAT math practice. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have your students access the Bluebook app. For this, you can see I already have it, like the username, password logged in. Your students would actually access this very similar to how they would access Safe Exam Browser when they're logging in. For the credentials for when they log in, students have received that during advisory, so they were instructed to take a picture of that. Hopefully they have that picture still, or they wrote it down somewhere. If a student did end up losing that or forgetting that, you can reach out to me and I'll help provide that login information next week. But for the sake of this video, let's pretend that the student did have the login information that they still had from advisory, and they're able to log into the Bluebook. So when they go ahead and log in, you're going to see a couple different things available. So your test, you can see there's no upcoming tests. They haven't activated it so they can do that SAT or the PSAT, the for real test yet. What we're going to more look at is where it says practice and prepare. So under practice and prepare, a couple things you can note on here. You could do a test preview so you can kind of see, they can see a preview what the test will look like. You can also do what's known as a full-length practice test. So when we click on the full-length test, depending on what grade level you have, so if you have 9th graders, 10th graders, or 11th graders, you can choose the appropriate test. So if it's an 11th grader who's taking the full SAT, they select SAT. You can see there's a variety of practice tests that could be chosen. If they're doing the PSAT 10 or the PSAT 9, they have some less variety, right? They can still do a practice test, but there's definitely more available if they choose the actual SAT versus the 8, 9, or the 10. So for this one, I'm going to choose the SAT. So if we're working with an 11th grade class, there's actually 6 practice tests available. There's 3 essays available. So we're more going to focus on the math part because we have math classes. But you can let students know that all of this is available on their own time as well, or if they utilize it in their English class or any other classes. So I'm going to pick practice test 1, just as the example. And you're going to see on here that students have the option to do accommodations or support. So if they have an IEP, they can actually select the accommodation that they're going to be getting. If it's extended time, if it's time and a half, the extended breaks, all that, they can actually adjust it for their accommodation so it's the same testing experience. For this example, I'm going to keep that unchecked, but that is available for students that want to choose that. So once I choose practice test 1 or SAT practice 1, I'm going to go to next. And it's going to start preparing. And then it's going to look very similar to, the directions are going to look very similar to what you would see on the actual SAT. Device select, it talks about assistive technology, and scores, timing, all of that. So when I hit next, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to start the timer right away, and it's going to go right to the English test. So the English test is going to be section 1, and there's 2 modules, a reading and a writing. And a couple things you're going to note, if they were doing the English test, the timer's at the top, but students can hide the timer. They have options to annotate, and all of that. They can still, though, do this test if they wanted to on their own, or, and it'll start another test session, or they can do another test session and do the same test in their English class. For our purposes, though, I'm going to click where it says question 1 of 27. And the nice thing is students can hop around between questions. I'm going to skip past this module because I want to jump right to the math. So I'm going to go to review page. And you can see I've answered none of these questions because I'm skipping this. I'm just going to click next. And that actually skips past that entire English module. I want to skip past the second English module. So the section 1 has 2 modules. I'm going to skip through the second one. and do the if they were to do English, that's something that's available to them. So I'm going to do the same thing, 1 of 27. So I could click. I'm going to go to the review page, and then from here I'm going to hit next. But they could have done that on their own if they wanted to. Students will receive a 10-minute test break in here. So for us, we're just going to resume testing because this is just for an example. But if a student wanted to practice this on their own, they can see that. And notice they can also see their battery life up here. So they never really should be surprised what their battery life is during the test. So when we hit resume testing, this is what the math example would look like. So it walks you through how to put in different answers, acceptable ways to, enter answers, all that fun stuff. Talks about how, figures are drawn to scale and so forth. So I'm going to hit close, and then this will bring us to like our first math question. A couple features to point out. If when you hit mark for review, let's say this is a question a student wants to come back to, they can see it's now marked, so they know to come back to that question. They also have this option to cross out answer choices. So when I click on that, if let's say, no, it's not number one, I can cross it out as I go. So that's kind of a good test taking strategy they can have. Some other features we have, like if I wanted to see the directions again, I still have access to those directions. The timer is at the top, but if I want to get rid of the timer, I could hit hide, and that would get rid of my timer. For more, I can see that I do have, shortcuts, assistive technology, a line reader if I want to read line by line, if that's something I wanted to use. We also have on here, if you wanted to save and exit, the reference sheet. This is the same reference sheet that they would have had with the old SAT. It's just they can easily pull it up at any time. The big one is, though, obviously the Desmos calculator. So you can see that the calculator, it's kind of tiny over here. They can do any feature that they can normally do with Desmos. They can move it around the screen. They can make it large if they want to, and it kind of covers it up, and they can move it around. But that's kind of a big addition to the digital SAT, is having that Desmos calculator, and then they can pull up the keyboard as needed. So this is what they would see then for the first module. They can jump around. They can see what question they're currently unanswered, the ones they're reviewing, and then they can finish the first module. So I believe it's 22 questions for 35 minutes. And then it would be the same deal with the second module. The second module, the difficulty of questions in module 2 is dictated by how they perform in the first module. So all students will receive the same questions in module 1, just maybe in somewhat of a different order. But however they perform in module 2, it kind of is like a choose your own adventure for the type of questions you would get for the second module. And you can see they'll still have access to the calculator and all of that. One feature that they'll have once they log in, when they hit next, let's say, obviously I wouldn't have done very well on this test. I kind of skipped through all the questions. You can see it says the digital SAT is over. So all work is shown. When I hit view my score, since it's already logged in, they're just going to use the same login that they used to board account. And again, that's like what they had to use to even get into the test, which might be different than past years where they never really used it. You can see it gives a score. My score wasn't so great. You can see I've done like this practice a few times, so it's like it depends on like what we were doing with it. You can see a couple details though when they do log in, so they can see like their score details if they'd like. So it'll break up what questions they did, what questions were skipped, so you could see the reading and writing I skipped. One feature that is kind of nice though is you could do practice on Khan Academy, and it will actually link it to how I performed on that practice test. So give like specific practice. So for example, if you wanted to have one day where you did a practice test with them, and then like another one of the days they did specific Khan Academy. The nice thing is I didn't have to re-log into my Khan Academy. It like those accounts seem to talk to each other. So it looks like it's the same credentials, or they can just do like a login with that.